All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at Spinoza. Specifically, we're going to be diving into his thoughts on free will and determinism. I mean, if everything is already predetermined, like how can any of our choices really be free?
Yeah, it's a tricky question.
And if we aren't free, how can we be held responsible
Mm.
for like anything that we do?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, are we just puppets, dancing on strings?
Well, that's what we're going to try to find out. That's one of the big things that Spinoza was wrestling with. And I think he came up with some pretty interesting answers.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a radical thinker for his time.
Definitely.
And even for now, like a lot of his ideas are still considered pretty out there.
For sure.
So to really understand Spinoza's take on free will, we kind of have to start with his view of God.
Yeah.
He calls God an absolutely infinite being. So it's not just that God is like unlimited in power or knowledge, it's that God is infinite in like every possible way.
So it's not just the best kind of being,
Yeah.
but it's all being.
Exactly. God possesses an infinite number of qualities, each of which is also infinite. And so this is really different from, that traditional view that you get of God as like a separate being out there somewhere, supernatural.
Right, like a dude in the clouds.
Yeah, exactly. For Spinoza, God is the universe. God is nature.
So everything is God.
Well, everything that exists flows from God's essence, just as inevitably as, like a mathematical proof.
So there's no room for chance,
Mhm.
no random events. Everything's just unfolding according to this predetermined plan.
Well, I don't know if Spinoza would necessarily say plan. It's more like an unfolding of all possibilities that are inherent in God's infinite nature.
Okay, so then how does that work with free will?
Right. So this brings us to Spinoza's concept of free will,
Okay.
which he saw not as the ability to just kind of choose randomly, rather the ability to act in accordance with our true nature.
Okay, but if everything is already determined, how can we act freely?
Right, so that's the big question. And for Spinoza, freedom doesn't come from having unlimited choices, but from really understanding the choices that we do have.
Okay.
And making those choices based on reason.
So it's not about controlling what happens around us, but more about mastering our inner world.
Exactly. And this is where he gets into his ideas about different kinds of knowledge.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so he outlines 3 kinds. He talks about imagination, reason, and then intuition.
Okay.
And imagination is basically that kind of knowledge that based on our sensory experiences, and it often leads to error or impulsive actions.
Oh, I know that one.
It's like reacting to a situation based on gut feeling without fully understanding the context.
Yeah, like buying something online that you don't need.
Exactly, yeah, like impulse buying. That's a perfect example of imagination.
Very familiar with that one.
Right.
But then there's reason.
Yeah, so reason is the higher form of knowledge. It's based on logic and understanding.
Okay.
And this is where we start to see the bigger picture. We start to recognize the connections, the cause and effect relationships that govern the universe.
So instead of just adding things to our cart, we're like, wait a minute, do I actually need this?
Yeah.
What's the impact of this purchase going to be?
Exactly. Yeah, you're thinking things through.
I'm using my reason.
You're using your reason. And then the third kind of knowledge, intuition. That's a bit more complex.
Okay.
It's kind of a direct, immediate understanding. It goes beyond even reason.
That's interesting.
It's like those moments when you have like a sudden flash of insight.
Right, like an aha moment.
Exactly. You just grasp the true essence of something.
Okay, I think I get that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if everything's predetermined,
Mm.
like even our thoughts and emotions,
Mm.
how can we be held morally responsible for our actions?
Right.
That seems like a pretty big contradiction.
Yeah, it's the question that's been puzzling philosophers for centuries. But Spinoza had a very unique perspective on this.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He believed that even though our actions might be determined, moral responsibility arises from our capacity for reason.
So even if we can't ultimately choose what we do, we can choose how we respond.
Precisely. Spinoza argues that the more we understand ourselves, and the more we understand the universe, the more skillful we become at navigating life's challenges.
It's like learning the rules of a game.
Yeah.
The more you understand the rules, the better you can play. Okay, so that's starting to make a little more sense to me. It's not about denying that there are limits to our freedom, but it's about recognizing the power that we do have to shape our experience through understanding and reason.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does moral responsibility tie into all of this?
Well, that's a great question, and that's where things start to get really interesting. We'll dive deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
So for Spinoza, moral responsibility, it really comes down to this idea of reason. The more we cultivate our reason, the more ethically we're going to act.
So it's not like there's this set of rules like do this, don't do that.
Right.
It's more about like a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of how our actions
Affect everything around us. Yeah.
It's like realizing we're all part of this big ecosystem.
Right, exactly.
You know, if we pollute the environment, we're ultimately harming ourselves.
Yeah, what goes around comes around.
Exactly.
But it's not about karma or anything like that. It's just understanding the natural consequences. Right, it's cause and effect. And this understanding for Spinoza, it's not just intellectual knowledge. It's about cultivating a certain way of being. He calls it intellectual love of God.
Intellectual love of God.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're not talking about like worshiping a deity in a traditional sense, are we?
And not exactly, no. It's more about experiencing this profound connection to the universe, this deep recognition of the unity of all things.
Because for Spinoza, God is nature.
Exactly. And so to understand nature is to understand God.
So it's about tapping into that sense of awe that we feel when we look up at the stars or, you know, see a beautiful flower.
Yeah, exactly.
The wonder, part of something much bigger.
Exactly. And that realization, it can be incredibly liberating.
Okay, I can see that.
You know, it allows us to move beyond the anxieties and frustrations of our little individual ego.
Right, so instead of getting caught up in all the drama of daily life, we can tap into this deeper sense of peace.
Exactly what comes
from understanding our place.
Yeah.
The grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and it's not that those daily dramas like completely disappear. Right. But we approach them differently. Okay. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We might ask, what can I learn from this? Or how can I use this as an opportunity to grow?
So it's like choosing to see the glass half full.
It's more than just positive thinking, though. Yeah. It's about aligning our actions with our understanding. Right. If we truly believe that everything happens for a reason.
In some mystical sense.
Right. But as a consequence of cause and effect.
Okay.
Then we can approach challenges with a sense of curiosity rather than resentment.
It makes me think of that quote from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
That's a great quote, yeah. And I think even though Frankl and Spinoza came from very different philosophical backgrounds, right, they're both pointing to a similar truth. We may not be able to control what happens to us.
But we can control how we respond.
Exactly.
Okay, so then how does reason fit into all this?
Well, this is where Spinoza's emphasis on reason, it really comes full circle. It's through reason that we gain the clarity to see what is and is not within our power to change.
Okay.
And that understanding allows us to act effectively.
So it's not about being passive.
Yeah.
It's about using our reason to make wise choices.
Exactly.
So it sounds like Spinoza's offering us this path to a different kind of freedom, a freedom that comes from understanding and acceptance and like skillful action.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yeah. And for Spinoza, this is the path to true fulfillment, a life lived in harmony with ourselves and the universe.
Now, I know this can all sound pretty abstract, so I want to pause here and invite you, the listener, to think about what we've been talking about. Maybe think about a time when you were facing a tough situation. Did you react like without thinking, based on fear or anger?
Yeah.
Or were you able to step back, kind of look at the situation with a clear head and then make a choice that felt right, you know, based on your values?
Yeah, those moments are really important.
We're not just controlled by our emotions or what's happening around us.
We can actually choose. We have the power to choose. Yeah. Even if we can't control what happens.
It's like we're taking back our power. But not through force, through understanding.
Yeah, through acceptance. It's a different kind of power.
And this brings us back to intellectual love of God.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it can sound kind of intimidating.
Right.
But it's really about feeling of connection to something.
Yeah, it's about belonging.
Belonging to the web of life.
Okay, so it's not about believing in a specific God.
Not necessarily.
Or following a religion.
No, it's more about how you see the world.
Okay.
Recognizing that everything's connected.
And finding joy in that. Yeah. Even when things are tough.
Exactly.
I mean, that's pretty different from what we usually hear about happiness.
It is, yeah. like focusing on achievement
Yeah.
or material things.
Right. Spinoza saying true fulfillment, it comes from understanding ourselves and our place in the universe.
That's a journey.
It is.
It's not like a quick fix.
It takes effort. It takes self-reflection. Yeah. It takes a willingness to, question everything you thought you knew.
And that's one of the coolest things about Spinoza.
It is.
He doesn't give us all the answers.
Right.
He gives us the tools to ask better questions.
Exactly. He encourages us to think critically, to challenge our beliefs.
So in this deep dive, we've talked about Spinoza's view of God, free will, determinism, and this path to freedom. It's been pretty mind-blowing.
It has.
And I hope it's given you a lot to think about.
Yeah, I hope our listeners found something in Spinoza's work that they can connect with.
And remember, this deep dive may be ending, but your journey of discovery, it never really has to end. Keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and keep diving deep. Until next time.
Follow The Infinite Within with Cecilia to explore profound insights on pantheism. Embrace the oneness of existence and unlock the mysteries within you.